Hey guys, what's going on? Joel Tavares here. You're watching DualShockers TV on DualShockers.com. I'm here hanging out with Job from Telltale Games.
What's up, man? Hey, everyone.
We just had a chance to check out Tales from the Borderlands, which was pretty amazing.
Thank you.
It's the first time we had a chance to actually get hands-on with the game. It's the first time you guys are letting people get hands-on since E3.
Yeah. First time we're doing a big round here in New York City for New York Comic Con. And glad you guys got to play it. The early sneak peek at the premiere. What did you think?
Well, from what we played, it definitely looks and feels like Borderlands. So people are going to be right at home. But you said that you guys work very closely in conjunction with Gearbox. So you want to go into that?
We do. So, it's October now. And if you're a big Borderlands fan, you know that this is like a huge year for Borderlands. We've got Borderlands, the pre-sequel, coming from Gearbox and our friends at 2K. And then after that ships this middle of October, Borderlands, Tales from the Borderlands, our series, will premiere by the end of this fall. So it's just a huge year for Borderlands. And if you know anything about the story, there's canonically, there's Borderlands the pre-sequel, Borderlands 2, and the story that takes place after Borderlands 2 is Tales from the Borderlands. So this is canon. This is Borderlands. It's part of the universe. We're working with the guys at Gearbox, and we just can't wait for everyone to play it. And you got a taste of it. You got a taste of life on Pandora after, spoilers, after the fall of Handsome Jack. Right. And I think you played as Reese,
yes,
and his sidekick Vaughn, as two guys who are kind of Hyperion workers who are on their way to Pandora to strike it rich, grab a vault key, and really take over the organization as best they can. So,
and one of the cool takeaways that I took from it was that for the first time, you're not a vault hunter.
No,
you're seeing what I guess the gritty life is on Pandora from someone who's from two characters so far that aren't used to that kind of life.
Yeah, so two characters. Like I mentioned, Brees. You're also going to play as another character named Fiona. And Fiona doesn't work for Hyperion. She was born and raised on Pandora. She's kind of a grifter and a con artist. And like everyone in Borderlands, everyone's really just trying to get rich, whether they're a vault hunter or not. And she's trying to get rich. She's trying to get off the rock of Pandora. And you're going to kind of see what it's like to play as Reese and see what his story is. When it starts out, you're going to flip the script and you're going to see how Fiona's telling the story. And eventually, they're both going to kind of come together, and you're going to play as both as the story goes along, right in the same scenes and right in the same episode.
And even the story that we had just played, like you said, we're getting each side of it. But what we just went through where we played as Reese, and all of a sudden it turned out that it was him telling the story to Fiona of how those events occurred. But she's seen it from her own angle.
Yeah, that's kind of how you're being introduced. They're both telling the story in retrospect to a mysterious stranger. Once they both kind of lay it out a little bit, you're really going to dive into the story of how this vault key deal went south and what happened after that. And one thing that's interesting is you didn't see him today, but we said this takes place after the fall of Handsome Jack, and Jack is dead. And as we've said, and as Gearbox has said, and Matt Armstrong, the franchise director and creator of Borderlands at Gearbox, has said, dead is dead.
Right.
But he's a huge part of this story, and how that works and how you're going to see him and what form. I think we don't want to spoil that for you, but Handsome Jack will be a huge part of this universe. So will several other characters in Borderlands, and it's all canon. So whatever happens to them here happens to them in Borderlands.
Now, Borderlands, again, it's known for its gunplay and its mechanics, and it's a very recognizable style of play that other games are trying to kind of emulate that Borderlands feel. This is definitely deviating from that style of play. So it's a Telltale game through and through.
Yeah, it's not a shooter. It's not an action game, but it's a Telltale game full of shooting and action. It's a dark sci-fi comedy, and it's Borderlands. It's just told in a Telltale way. When you're playing a Telltale game, whether you play The Walking Dead or Wolf Among Us, if you pick up a controller or you pick up an iPad or your phone and you're playing this series, it'll be out on lots of devices this fall. You're going to feel right at home if you've played any other Telltale game. And, you play the story when you play Tales from the Borderlands or any Telltale game. It's not about being a shooter. It's about playing the story where people are shooting. And we just really can't wait for fans to play it and for people to get their hands on it. You got your hands on it. Were there any explosions? Were there any robots? Were there any psycho bandits?
Check.
Okay, good. So Borderlands.
Right.
It's super exciting. It's just this. It's a lot like the Borderlands TV show, except you can play it.
Right, and it's funny you mentioned TV show because we talked about presentation, and you guys are huge on presentation. You said a lot of video guys, a lot of guys that studied film and cinema get to put together like the way you experience this.
Yeah,
and it showed through in the small bit that I've played. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of it, obviously through your previous work, but it's like it's just getting better with that polish. So
thanks.
How's that?
It's at Telltale. It's like I said, our philosophy is to play the story. So a huge percentage of the writing and design of this game is really what happens first. Getting together in the writer's room and figuring out the story and how a tailored story and a tailored narrative is going to work, and certain branching paths and certain behaviors. If you're playing as Reese as more of a jerk, what's the game going to be like? If you're playing as more of a kind of a smart-ass hacker with a heart of gold, it's going to be a little bit different. And figuring that out in the writer's room, getting scripts together and figuring out design of how gameplay mechanics will service the story as opposed to story service and gameplay mechanics. That's how we work at Telltale, and it's story first. And a lot of people at Telltale, they come from gaming backgrounds, but we also have a lot of people that come from film. Great directors like Nick Herman is actually directing the premiere. He directed on The Walking Dead and the premiere of The Wolf Among Us. And it's using that cinematic language that we're familiar with from just watching film and watching crazy action movies that we're really implementing here. And it's everything that you see in a Telltale game is the same language that you would see in a movie or a show, but you can play it.
Right. And another cool thing about how this game came into fruition, right? So it's kind of like...
Oh, yeah. It's, it's...
So you guys had a fun night. All of a sudden, Telltale and Gearbox hanging out.
It was, I think back at the 2012 VGAs, we had a good night. So did Gearbox. We all went out drinking to celebrate and had a lot of tequila. And 9 months later, 10 months later, we announced this baby's coming out. And that's all we can say about that. I'll leave the rest to your imagination, but it's great. And those guys are just so much fun to work with, working with Gearbox and 2K. We're just so excited. And, it's the biggest year for Borderlands, I think, yet. And, this is going to be all over the place. Right now, Telltale's games are playable on over 6,000 different devices. And, Tales will be on, all consoles and mobile and iOS and tablets and pretty much anywhere that you play games, we're going to be there for you to play these stories. And a lot more like Netflix. We want to be everywhere that you want to consume entertainment. Right. And that's really where Telltale's headed. And, we're coming to you. So.
Well, that means you guys have no excuse to not play Tales from the Borderlands. No. You can't say you don't have a machine, a console, a phone, a tablet that plays it, because it's going to come out for everything.
Right. And, and while Borderlands, the pre-sequel, won't necessarily be on as many devices, there will be some cool unlocks. With your Shift account, we're more details coming soon, but if you're playing and you own Tales from the Borderlands, you'll actually be able to unlock some really cool stuff in Borderlands, the pre-sequel.
That's all you had to say was unlock stuff.
Yes. Unlock
loot.
Stuff.
Loot.
Unlock stuff. Unlock loot. But more details on that and how that'll work for different platforms will be forthcoming and what those unlocks will be. But, this is Borderlands through and through. And we're just really stoked for premiere later this fall.
Well, Job, thank you so much.
Dude, thank you. Thanks for coming by to play it.
And, Tales from the Borderlands coming from Telltale Games. You're watching DualShockers TV on DualShockers.com, and we're out.